Ayodhya fever has gripped the nation in more ways than one. One of the beneficiaries, one of the people with foresight to maybe have a large presence there and created a flutter by doing a deal with Amitabh Bachchan was the House of Abhinandan Lodha group. And I thought it was pertinent to get Mr. Abhinandan Lodha in on this conversation about what is he sensing with regards to, say, maybe real estate, not just at Ayodhya, but across various parcels that he may be operating in. Because as I learned at the WAF in Davos, that India seems to be the place to be. Abhinandan, great having you. Thanks for taking the time out and being with us.
Thank you, Niraj. Thank you for having us.
Let's start off with the Ayodhya fever, because you presumably have large parcels there, so you had the foresight to go out and do it as well. I would love to understand, how have you seen the response or the change in response from, say, 12 months ago to now, and what's your assessment of how things move ahead?
So I think we were lucky to see the change in Ayodhya ji's economic and social outlook a bit ahead of the curve. And what we've seen the last 12 months is everybody's seen the translation from potential to actualization. And it's quite amazing. The way Ayodhya ji has built out in the last 12 months in terms of infrastructure and the plans for the next 12 months in terms of what they are going to do creates a very, very compelling economic story for people to participate in. And we are also seeing the change in that. We in fact launched our development just last night called the Saryu, and in less than 12 hours we've effectively been sold out.
Sold out in less than 12 hours?
Yes.
This is a plotted development?
So this is the first phase of the plotted development. We have villas and residential apartments there as well. We just launched the plots, and what we've seen is the participation is extremely unique. It's from roughly 63 countries across the world, and these are people from 70% of them have some history related to Uttar Pradesh. Either their families have been there or they've been there, and all of them are coming together to realize the economic potential of Ayodhya ji with the kind of development which is happening. So it is the emotional appeal, but it's also a very, very strong underlying economic rationale.
Can you elaborate a bit on that?
So what's our sensing is Uttar Pradesh is the nerve center of the country in terms of, is the most populated state, and it's also extremely politically important. But for the last 30, 40 years, a lot of the investment from Uttar Pradesh actually went out because people were not very, very clear about the economic trajectory of that state, probably till 2010, 2015. And people also migrated out of there. People have now understood that the kind of infrastructure getting built out in Uttar Pradesh, starting with Ayodhya ji as point one, but even if you see Lucknow, Vrindavan, Kashi, etc., it's unique in terms of the size, scale and speed of execution. And the administrative behavior of the state is also quite exemplary from what I've seen in almost most other states across India. It's very well managed, which normally leads to a very strong economic boom. The Indian cultural tourism acceptance has also grown substantially across the world. So I think people are sort of interjecting the fact that there is going to be great infrastructure getting built here. The economic policies are pro-investment. The kind of people coming here are in a position to spend, and there is a deep desire to spend because nobody spent inside the state for almost 30, 40 years. All of this is coming together to create a confluence of demand, not just for Ayodhya ji, but I'm guessing in most locations across UP where we believe we will be operating in the next 12 months.
Okay. Before I talk a bit about that, just a word on the demand in Ayodhya per se. Now, do you reckon that this is a start of something substantial out there, or has the substantial already happened and now it will be more gradual or streamlining or flatlining, because a large portion of uptick, as we read in the reports, has already happened?
My view, Niraj, is that the movement on the ground is real and it has just started. Over the next 12 to 24 months, the amount of people who will come and see Ayodhya ji is more than the amount of people who've seen in the last 40 years put together.
Agreed.
And more and more the people come and they see the change. In the last 12 months, Ayodhya ji has gone from being, I would believe, a town in Uttar Pradesh to it is getting built out like any other global city. When you see the common areas, they are on line with what you would probably see in Sydney or Prague. The kind of cleanliness, the size of the common areas that they are building out, and the quality of work that they are doing is quite outstanding. So if I was to sort of juxtapose all of these together, it would ideally mean that we are seeing the start of a sustained economic revival in that part of the country. And that will lead to a very, very quick escalation over the next 3 or 4 years in terms of demand and on-ground change in pricing.
Also because the base is
very, very small.
Very small.
It's very, very small.
Got it. And you expect, and you anticipate that even Uttar Pradesh as a state could actually see, if not similar, but strong trends because, as you said off-air, that real estate and economy follows infrastructure development, and infra development out there is to be seen, to be believed.
We are very, very bullish on Uttar Pradesh as a group. We believe that this is going to be quite transformational over the next 5 years. And in our mind, the largest real estate movement in this country will come in this state. So it is not just Ayodhya ji. I think there are almost 8 or 9 locations across Uttar Pradesh which will see similar kind of movement over the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay, and you reckon that infra development has happened, but economic development, which thus far hasn't been the strongest, could also come about? Because as a real estate person, I'm guessing you look at all of these factors. Can you talk a bit about what you're seeing there?
So what we're seeing is the infrastructure development is taking place at a rapid pace. The acceptance of Uttar Pradesh as being a central part of what the story in India needs to be is quite high. People are sort of seeing that there is no issues with regards to law and order. And with all of this put together, we see the real estate pricing is going to change quite substantially. And economic rationale dictates that a lot of the industries and a lot of participation has to go up in UP. If I was to sort of put it in numbers, my personal belief, backed with some data, is that the investment UP will see in the next 5 years is more than what has seen in the last 30 years put together from outsiders.
Wow. Okay. Okay, and a bit of emotional factors attached because Uttar Pradesh people haven't, or anybody with any lineage to Uttar Pradesh hasn't quite invested, and now they might see rational there. But
yes.
Even aside of that,
yes, I think there is a very strong emotional appeal, but the emotional appeal may have been there for a long period of time. It is now getting backed with 2 things. It is getting backed with an economic rationale and getting backed with the revival of sort of cultural epicenters of India. Which again, coming back to the economic part of it, means that anybody who's been taking money from the state and moving outside now believes that it's best to keep the money inside the state and see it multiply.
were talking to the Tamil Nadu minister, and he was talking about how tourism in the state is very high, simply because it's not necessarily people coming from outside the way they are coming to Goa or Kerala or Rajasthan, but it's the temple tourism, which is very high in Tamil Nadu. And what you say might be echoing that. Now tell us, since we have you, would love to understand about your view on the real estate cycle as well, both from a perspective of land, which you are predominantly doing, but even otherwise, because you've been forced to reckon with all these years. Most people seem to suggest that we are in the midst of a long upcycle in real estate. You have seen multiple past cycles. What's your belief about the current one, which has been underway now for a couple of years? What's your belief?
So I think if we sort of step back and see that there was almost a 6 to 7 year period where real estate was not necessarily doing as well as it had done historically. So I think what we've seen right now is largely a catch-up of those 6 or 7 years of lower performance, coming back and setting the sector back on par. The general theory would be that the kind of economic growth India is on and the propensity of people to spend, with the lowering of cost of borrowing across the board for most companies, means that the participation of real estate should grow substantially in line with the sort of growth on the mortgage rates, etc. So I would say that we are probably at the early start of what should be a continuing movement on real estate. Now, whether it is volume-led or pricing-led will need to get discovered. Pricing will definitely move in line with inflation, which is reasonably closer to double digits at this point of time for real estate developers. Whether it's able to move above that or not will really depend from, I would say there will be a set of developers who will probably see price appreciation beyond that, based on the quality of development that they do, but there should be volume growth across the board.
Okay. The other aspect that I keep on hearing is that because the number of players is getting concentrated, that automatically means that the organized and the large players will keep on seeing benefits. Now, some bit of that you would argue could have played out already. I would love to understand from you, do you think that that aspect itself still has some way to go?
There was a phase where real estate consolidation had become the buzzword, and there were sort of weaker hands. I think there were a lot of weaker developers who were sort of moving out and stronger developers were coming in because demand was getting concentrated. I think that phase, to my knowledge, has reasonably played out.
Okay.
Now demand is across the board. Maybe it's at different price points. So the movement from here will be, the biggers probably will get bigger, but the smallers will also continue to exist.
Okay. My final question, Abhinandan. We were reading a Collier's note in December, which spoke about the kind of uptick in demand for commercial real estate, but concentrated around the three southern cities, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, maybe to an extent Pune, but that was, and to an extent NCR, but that was about it. MMR, for example, didn't have a very large commercial uptick as per that note as well. I would love to understand from you, because a lot of people are talking about how REITs, commercial real estate, leasing, the power of 12%, 13% return might be big in India over the course of the next few years as well. Now, one, do you agree with that assessment that leasing, REITs, commercial real estate could be big, part one? Part two, could it be concentrated where the tech hubs are, or do you reckon events like what's happened on 22nd Jan in Ayodhya or elsewhere could actually see some bit of that moving to the other parts of the country as well?
I think, I'll break this down into two parts. For a long time, India's population in general has not invested into alternative assets. So we've seen sort of fixation around 3 or 4 kind of asset categories. Yield-based real estate buying has not taken place for a long time, but it is quite prominent now in the minds of most people. It doesn't need to be that you're going to put, say, 1 million or 5 crore rupees into a REIT. People are wanting to participate, maybe with a smaller ticket size also. That enabled with the recent SEBI thought process around allowing REITs of 25 to 50 crores to start fructifying, in my mind would mean that a lot of participation will happen for that 10, 12, 13% yield. You will see the quality of the commercial assets also changing. You'll see a lot more of hospitality play also coming into becoming yield assets, and people participating there, not necessarily in the form of fractional ownership the way it is understood today, but in the form of having an upside link to the change in the underlying asset. So that will change quite substantially. I think there will be a lot more 25, 50, 75, 100 crore rupee REITs happening now than the larger ones happening. in terms of the participation from the larger population. In terms of where the commercial hub will get concentrated, I do believe it requires a lot of infrastructure creation, which some of the southern states and Pune have done very, very well. Unless the other epicenters of the country catch up with the creation of that, it will be difficult to keep pace with those 4 or 5 regions.
Okay, what about, last question, what about Mumbai? MMR is seeing infra development for sure. What happens here?
The pricing difference in MMR between residential and commercial real estate is quite stark. I know MMR also is probably the most, it's got the highest price point across all parts of the market as compared to any other city. Just in terms of economic rationale, in most places ends up that the supply of residential is limited and needs to grow. Commercial is not necessarily in line with the same. So most developers in Mumbai necessarily look at commercial as either completion of a township or only in very, very select locations. I would believe the growth in residential in Mumbai will be stronger and faster as compared to the growth of commercial.
Okay, great. Abhinandan, thanks for joining us today. Fantastic work in all that you've done recent past, and thanks for sharing what could happen towards the biggest news flow in town currently, which is what's happening in Ayodhya. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Niraj. Thank you so much.
And viewers, thanks for tuning in.